So you can see that there is a lot of money in this, and I think what a lot of folks are not going to be surprised by is the number of mines in the United States. So right now there are over 12,000 mines in the United States.
Alone?
Just in the United States. Yep.
That's
so there are a lot of mines. And admittedly, the number of mines is getting smaller, but actually, I will say, I thought it would be getting smaller more quickly because a lot of mining is actually being done in other countries right now because we'll talk about this. Some of the environmental regulations that we have make it harder to mine in the United States than it is abroad. But there are some things that change that. So this is a fairly big business. And I'm just going to check because there we go. And by the way, Janet, so you're right, oil and gas products, well, they weren't grown. They come out of the ground, admittedly extracted would maybe a better word than that, but it's considered, you're right, extracted, but you were taking them out of the ground. And I will say, as a geologist, if you're taking it out of the ground, that's good enough for me to call that. So now I wanted to ask you what, and this is actually brings this up. What do you think of when you think of a mine? What do you think of? Let's see what do you think of when you think of a mine? So Janet says strip mines. So there we go. Danger to miners, good. Oh, Caesar, sea mines. That's actually a different kind of mine. That's a sea mine is one where it's an explosive. When you touch it, it goes boom. I have no idea why they are also called, why they have the same name. Jacob?
It probably comes from the same statement as a landmine.
Could be, yeah.
Just the explosive process of creating a landmine, a mine.
Oh, Pam says a coal mine. Marie says a quarry. These are great. Yes, Janet, the Midway landfill did start as a quarry, exactly. Things with explosions and tractors, you're exactly right. And one thing, I'm actually pretty impressed because when I often ask students what they think of, almost all of them will try and describe something like this, which is a, in the ground, underground mine. I think that's from movies and things like that. But that is actually not, that is one kind of mine, certainly. That's called a subsurface mine. But you guys came up with some other ones that were absolutely right on. So for instance, this is what's called an open pit mine. This one happens to be a gold mine in Nevada.
Oh, wow.
But much of our mining these days, not all of it, but much of it is actually done in this way, just sort of digging a big hole in the ground. But there are other kinds of mines. Somebody mentioned a quarry. So indeed, yeah, and I'm sorry, this is a little hard for you to see with the broken screen, but this is a quarry. This is a place where you're basically digging out from the side of a mountain. And that also is a mine. And I'm really impressed by you all because someone mentioned a strip mine, which is another kind of mine. In fact, this is a mine down in Centralia, a coal mine, Centralia, Washington. So where you basically are scraping just the top off and getting at fairly shallow levels, not digging super deep. So when I am talking, and maybe I should have also put a picture of an oil derrick, but because I am considering that somewhat mines as well.
Yeah, so, I would consider it as well.
Does it point? Another quarry was just south of Kent. You're right. Yep. There have been and we'll talk a little bit more about the quarries, about our local in just a bit. So generally, when we talk about different mines, we talk about 4 different sort of categories. Metals, or mines where you're pulling metals out, and I'm going to talk about most of these. Non-metallic minerals, energy, where you're extracting something that might be used for energy, and then aggregate. And so I'm going to talk about each of these and give you an example of something that I think is kind of cool from each of these. And I'm going to start off with the one that most people don't think about, but actually turns out to be the biggest one, and that is aggregate. So these are quarries or mines where you're pulling sand, gravel, even sometimes big rocks for use in like landscaping and that sort of thing. And this is used, there's so much of this used. For instance, if you just want to do a single lane of an interstate for a mile, you need about 20,000 tons. So that's about 40 million pounds of sand and gravel.
Oh my gosh.
It's huge. And indeed, this is the biggest mining thing in Washington State by a long shot. We produce about $670 million of sand and gravel and aggregate in Washington State, just Washington State. So that's it's 2/3 of $1 billion. That's a lot of money just in sand and gravel sold in Washington State. And one of the reasons why this is so important is because every time you pour cement or concrete, I just did it wrong, but anyway, concrete, you mix in typically 50, 70+% sand and gravel to it. Whenever you're doing, so when you're doing a building out, anytime you see cement concrete being done, yeah.
Want me to turn it down a little bit?
So
okay.
It's just huge.
Yeah.
Many of these are right in our area. For instance, there's one that you may know of that's right up in Renton, up on the hill slope. It's called the Black River Quarry. They do.
Other people probably.
Yeah. And then, let's see here, just a second. Let me do that. And I'm hearing. There we go. And then there's also down at Renton, there's a couple of big ones down in down in Fife. You're coming down south on I-5. You've just gone past Federal Way, and you're just about to hit the Tidelands in Tacoma, where all the automobile dealerships are. There's a big sand and gravel quarry there. There are a lot of these right in our area, both historical and there are about 900 in the state. So
Jeez.
It's huge. And if you just look at the number of mines in the United States, about half of them are sand and gravel. And the reason why this is because it's so expensive to transport it because it's so heavy. You don't want to be transporting, if you need, that 40 million pounds of gravel to build that lane of highway, you don't want to be shipping that much from a long ways away. So as a result, we have lots of these mines. So, and let's see here. Let's just see. Indeed, every single one of you, on average, uses over about 15,000 pounds of sand, gravel, and stone from these each year.
Oh my God.
Every single one of you. Now, you're not actually like buying that, but if you would sort of take all the sand and gravel used in all the roads in this building, all the buildings that you use, and divide it up by the number of people, you end up with about 15,000 pounds per year of sand and gravel. It's just huge.
Gee.
So it's actually closer to 17,000, but, and it does vary a little bit. So it is by far, it's huge the amount people use and how much we use. So that's sand and gravel. Oh, we got it. Something. Yeah, that is bananas. You're right, Marie. It is a lot. So let's now switch to something maybe a little bit more like people think of when they think of mines. What about metallic minerals? What are some metallic minerals that you think we might mine or use a lot of? And let's see here. What have we got? There we go. Gold, silver, copper, good. Lithium is actually, it is something that is mined. It's quite valuable. It doesn't happen to be a metal when we mine it, but it is turned into a metal and used. So that's actually true. I don't actually know. Would you consider lithium a metallic? I don't.
No,
Yeah.
lithium is used in
Yeah,
batteries.
because they use. You're
Not
right.
in its mine form.
Right. So yes, so then that would count, but then neither is iron most of the time. So yeah, good. Platinum, tin, oh, aluminum. Yeah. In fact, so a lot of these actually are kind of cool in that we here. So this is, they don't actually look that. So there's some gold ore for you, and I'm going to put it under the camera here so people can see. Zinc, yep, we need all those things. Those are all minerals that work, and I'm going to stop sharing just a second. I'm going to actually, I want to switch. New share. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. So hopefully folks can see this rock that I've got here. This is a piece of gold ore, actually. It is a little bit sparkly. I will say that it's, if you were to be here, you would find that it's actually fairly dense, but you might not really notice it. This is unusually sparkly, actually, as something that might be a place where you could get gold out of, a rock you could get gold out of. But typically gold ore is not very concentrated. And so you have to then purify it. This one that I've got here is some iron ore. And that's called red ochre, and that's a iron ore. So these things look different, and I'll pass these on to you so you can see these. And then I also wanted to show, since somebody, I think it was Marie, brought it up. Yes, Janet, iron pyrite is called fool's gold, and there was a lot in that, but there was also real gold. So this, believe it or not, this is a rock called bauxite, or a mineral called bauxite, and it is actually what we turn into aluminum, like aluminum foil, or if you use aluminum, like in an airplane, that sort of thing. But I will say, to make this, turn this from this into actual metallic aluminum, and I'm going to go take this to the folks that are in the room here. It takes a huge amount of energy. And as a result, it's why it's so important that we recycle our aluminum, including our aluminum cans, because of the amount of energy that it takes. So all those are excellent examples of things that we mine from, the metallic things we mine. And now let's do share. Where is it? There we go. So we're going to go back here. All right. So you guys came up from with a lot of these things. So lead, if you've, lead, like, I guess we're not supposed to use them in for fishing anymore, or sometimes with bullets, but that comes from a mineral called galena, which I didn't bring, but there are lots of different things that come from different minerals. But in that case, sometimes they come out just as, you would imagine, but most of the time you have to then process that mineral. And that takes a lot of energy, and it also creates a lot of waste, which is going to come up pretty soon here. In Washington State, we do have a bunch of metallic mineral mines, including one that is quite substantial, is the Buckhorn Mountain gold mine. So we do have some gold mines. The blue are ones that are actually either currently permitted or currently in operation. I believe that this Buckhorn is the only one that's really seriously going on. All the little blue dots, so we are in Seattle here, are places where there is been known to be some sort of metallic minerals found. So there's quite a bit. But most of the actual mining has occurred very much in the far north eastern part of Washington state. But we do have some active, this Buckhorn Mountain gold mine is currently active. This area down by Wenatchee, that is an old gold mining location called Liberty, and they've pulled out a tremendous amount of gold from there. There is still some mining going on there, but it's mostly just individuals. It's not a big commercial
I would like
place.
mine.
Yeah. So, and you can go up there and see people actually mining. So that's metallic minerals, but what about non-metallic minerals? Can anyone think of any non-metallic minerals that might be, that we might want to mine?
A marble.
Ah, marble, excellent. Yeah. Oh, gypsum. Yeah,
That's
going to
pretty
ask
long.
that, why in Southeast Washington there are no mines? There actually are a lot of mines in Southeastern Washington. They're just all sand and gravel and aggregate mines. There's
Oh,
not much. There is one, and I do not know what they're mined down near Astoria. There, I noticed on the map, if we go back, that I have no idea what that actually is. So if you notice, see that?
yeah.
I have no clue. So for those online, I'm looking at this little red triangle here. I do not know. I noticed it. It was like, huh, I wonder, and I have not found out. Oh, limestone is a great, is a great non-metallic one, non-metallic mineral. That's really important because for limestone, what we do is we take limestone and we actually put it in a kiln and bake it, and that becomes cement. Portland cement, which we then make concrete out of and all that sort of stuff. Good. So lots of cool different things. Gypsum you mentioned. So there are a lot of non-metallic minerals. Oh, Janet, good. There is. So all right, I've got to figure out how I'm going to do this. Good. All right, so this is, I give you this one. So this is some gypsum. So that's what we take and make wallboard out of. And for those online, I'll put this on the screen. Let's see here. Hopefully this, there we go. So this right here, nice if I could, oh, there's the light. There we go. So you'll notice this stuff right here, it's a mineral. It's quite soft. I can scratch it with my fingernail. And this is the mineral gypsum. So this is what we make all wallboard out of that you are probably surrounded by if you're indoors right now, which most of you are. So that's a pretty cool one. And then someone brought up another mineral, and this is a beautiful example of this mineral. And this too is mined. Yet most of us don't think of it that way because for a lot of us, we think of it as something to eat. Yeah, Pam, you got it. It's salt. So this is a big hunk of salt. It is exactly like the salt you would put in your salt shaker. But what are some other uses of salt that we have outside of eating it?
Use it for on roads.
Yes, on roads, to melt stuff on roads. Exactly. That's a really big one. And let's see here. So yes, that is to de-ice roads and that sort of thing. So that's another non-metallic mineral. I'm going to talk about one, preserved foods. Yep. Yep, that's another good one. So there, yeah, it's also used in some chemical processes as well. So these are all examples. Yeah, and it is a necessary nutrient, salt, or at least the sodium in it. So these are all good examples. Some of you, no one brought up, I thought that was interesting, silica. So silica is, you get it, sand, it's made up of silica, but glass is made up of silica. So if you've got like your glass screen on your television, or probably what broke on this screen here, yeah, it's all silica. So yep, you do get opals, which are gems as well. So and these are, and I haven't even mentioned gemstones at all here. So but there's one that I think is particularly cool, and I will tell you, we don't have much of it. Oh, here's our places where we have non-metallic mines in Washington State. So you can see quite a few in here. Not many are currently active right now, but we do have a few, mostly silica and limestone for concrete. In fact, the town of Concrete is named that because they've got a nice limestone source there. So, but you can see all the little dots are other places where there is some sort of a mineral location. Now, obviously, these are not mines. Some of them are in national parks. Some of them are not enough to be economic, but you know, we do have these non-metallic mines in our area. So, yeah. So, but this is a non-metallic mineral or rock that actually turns out to be rather important. And I do have another. This is so. Chris, can you read what the label on that says?
P. I can read it.
No, okay, that's fine. It's not easy. It's phosphate.
I know phosphate.
Yeah,
I know phosphate.
yeah. So this is something that we mine a lot, and actually this is particularly phosphorite, where we get phosphate out of. And by the way, there's some really pretty ones of these, which we call apatite. Does anyone know why this is a fairly important mineral that we mine? An incredibly, yeah, looks as though. So, yeah, Marie, you got it. This is critical for fertilizing. So if you look at the history of agriculture, when we produce whether any sort of crop, we deplete the soil. One of the biggest things we deplete is phosphate. And so to put it back in, we need fertilizer. We need fertilizer typically. From about the 1700s to the mid 1800s, we used bird poop mostly, and we fought wars over bird poop, believe it or not, because that's high in phosphorus. But then we found the mineral or the rock, and we ended up with being able to use this. We do not have any phosphate mines in Washington State, but there are some in the Western United States, in Idaho, Montana, and Nevada. And then there are really big ones in the Sahara in Africa. And it's incredibly important because without this stuff, frankly, we would probably be starving. The world's production of food would be significantly curtailed without this, and we just couldn't grow enough food. So so in a way, I know when you're eating a sandwich or whatever, and it's been grown, and you're in essence eating this mineral because they basically grind it up, put it in fertilizer, and then the plants use the fertilizer to grow. So you eat it, which is important because you need to actually, you need phosphorus for cell walls and things like that. So
Oh, wow.
it's an incredibly important, and there have been a lot of wars, and there still are wars fought over this kind of ugly rock.
Oh,
So
what's important, though?
yes,
Without
very
it-
important.
Without it, we would be toast.
Well, no, we wouldn't have any toast. It's the problem.
We would have no toast.
We'd be starving.
Oh, man, right.
Yeah. So I did want to mention, so remember we have the aggregate, the metallic, the non-metallic, and we do have energy. And I did want to mention it a little bit, but I also want to have plenty of time for questions. Coal is a good example of this, but there are other sorts of the fossil fuels that we do mine, but coal is a big one. And I don't know if people realize this, but the history of this area is actually so if the Pacific Northwest, the very first thing when we were first settled this area, no, I shouldn't say we. When white people first settled this area, and I am white, so it is we for me, but anyway, when white people first settled this area, the very first thing they sort of did was they took all the big trees, cut them down, sawed them, and the biggest industry by far was the lumber industry. And a lot of that lumber went to San Francisco, especially to rebuild after the big fire in 1908 that burned down. But pretty soon, as you can imagine, we sort of got rid of all the big trees in this area. Everything was logged out. And the next big industry in the Puget Sound was coal. And if you are aware and know some names, you might know places like Coal Creek Parkway. And there's a reason why it's called Coal Creek Parkway, because there was Coal Creek on it, because there was a creek there and there was a lot of gold. The town of Black Diamond or Newcastle. These are names of coal mining towns in other places that they then used for the coal mining places in this area. So for actually about 20 or 30 years, the primary export, in the same way that we now think of Amazon and high tech being the main export from this area, it was actually coal in this area. And if you live in Renton, yeah, so Janet says Black Diamond originated as coal mining towns. So she's got, yeah, this is exactly right. These, you can still see it. And indeed, in Renton, which also was an area with coal mining, you have to be careful if you're hiking around and in some places, because there are old coal mines and you can actually fall into pits. And they've had a big program to try and identify these areas and remediate them so that people don't accidentally fall into them or they don't cause the land to subside and that sort of thing. So coal mining has been around here for a long time. And actually, the last coal mine only closed in the 1980s in this area. So we actually did have coal mining here until, was that 40 years ago or so?
Still active in Centralia?
They have, boy, I don't know. They were shutting it, Centralia down. I think they have, but it was certainly Centralia, and I'm just talking Puget Sound. So Centralia was a huge coal mine that was active until I think just a few years ago, and they've since decided to shut it down. They did stop, like they're not producing electricity there from the coal mine. They switched it to natural gas. So yeah, so coal has been a big thing in this area. It's not now, and I don't think a lot of people realize it, but it was one of the primary things that we produced.
I mean, I do know about it since I heard about like trains using coal.
Yeah.
The Titanic used a ton of it, steamboats and whatnot.
Yep, that's right. So all those things, they used coal, and that coal was mined locally, especially around sort of the Bellevue to Renton, sort of along that area, and then up into the mountains a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So you will find a lot of old coal mines in this area if you go looking around. And I guess, so now we've sort of given some examples of each of the 4 different kinds of mines, but I do want to recognize a few things. One is that mineral resources, they are particularly valuable because and important for a lot of things. First of all, they're not evenly distributed. There are places with a lot of resources and places with not so much. And some places have more of one and some places have more of another. So for instance, we don't have much phosphate, but we at least at one point had quite a bit of coal. And as a result, it forces us to either import or export what we have and what we don't have. And that creates a lot of both good trade and economics, but also dependence. And we certainly have seen problems with that, that dependence at times. Honestly, think about taking away all the stuff that we mine, your quality of life would not be the same.
Wow.
A lot of what we appreciate in the United States as high quality of life is because we have a lot of natural resources, and especially those mineral resources. Right now, one of the things that's making us being a lot better than other places in the world is, frankly, we've got a lot of energy resources, oil, natural gas, and means that we aren't as dependent on the Middle East and Russia as some places are. And those areas, it's gotten, those energy prices have gone up. As a result, we not only haven't had to pay those higher prices sometimes, but we actually sell to other people, which is kind of a flip. So, and if you look at sort of the how rich a country is versus how there's a real good correlation between, or how rich people are in a country, sort of the average income, there's a real good correlation between the mineral wealth and what they have. So this is substantially. So interestingly, at one point, you're right, West Virginia coal mining was quite significant. Right now, frankly, because oil has not been that, and coal has now gotten fairly expensive to extract, coal mining industry has more or less gone away. There's still a little bit, but frankly, the biggest coal mining area is now Arizona. So,
Going there?
yep, they've overtaken the places we think of. Yeah, so it would not have that much of a impact. So I've been talking about, so one of the things I wanted to talk about for this presentation was the importance. Also, frankly, I'm a geologist, so I want folks to know that there's a big industry out there. If you are looking for jobs and you are interested there, you can become a geologist. And one of the jobs geologists do is work for mining companies to find and help them extract those things. And if that's something, you can do quite well that way. So, you know, all those mines have to have people running them. And a lot of those folks are geologists and civil engineers. So there is that. But I also want to take a look at the flip side of it. And the extraction of these resources that we use are incredibly impactful because they impact the water, they impact the air, they impact obviously the ground. All of these things have their own impacts. And it would be, you can literally take in multiple courses on the impacts of mining. And I'm going to just share a couple of them with you. There's safety hazards. So coal mines currently typically average about between 30 and 50 deaths in the United States a year. It's a hazardous job to be a coal miner. And so it's not insignificant. Mining has a reputation of being fairly dangerous. I don't think it's as dangerous. I know it's not as dangerous as it used to be. It used to be incredibly dangerous. It's a lot better now, but it's still, it is, I will say it's less dangerous than driving for a living, but it's still not as safe as teaching geology, let's say that.
Uh,
Let me just point out a few, some of those bad things. Yeah, explosivity because of the gas. You're right, Janet. You're right. That's huge. So what I'm showing here, a picture here is what we call acid runoff. So typically when you have in a mine, you've got these funky minerals. They often cause the water to turn acidic and you get this really ugly stuff that kills everything. The picture on the left is in Brazil, and you can see this big tract. This is outflow of stuff from a mine that basically killed all the vegetation.
oh my gosh.
So it can cause a huge amount of damage. So historically, mines have created a lot of damage, and you can sort of see that. So here's a big open mine. You can see they've stripped off everything. That one's actually currently still operating. Everything's gone from it. But there's another piece of mines that lasts for a long time, and this lower one is what we call tailings. So if we want to mine something, there's often a lot of stuff that we don't want mixed in with the stuff we do want. So if you're mining gold, typically for every pound of gold you get, you're going to have almost 1 million pounds of other stuff
But you don't want.
that you don't want. And that ends up making for big piles of what we call tailings. And so mines end up with all these awful tailings that are tailing piles, these piles of the stuff that's not what the mining company wants and they can't sell. And those can be both dangerous and bad for the environment because they can collapse. And yeah, and you'll see that nothing's growing on it because there's no soil. Currently, in the United States, we do have rules. They don't always work, I will admit, but we do have rules where any mine that is permitted, they have to have a plan and they actually have to put money away to what we call reclaim it. And this is the same location. This is during the active mine on the left. I don't know if you're looking on Zoom, if it's on the left, and then after remediation on the right. Yeah. I think you can tell which one is which. So hopefully you can see that we can do better. Now, is it perfect? No, it is not the same. And it takes a lot of money even to get where we were. Yeah. Yes, Jan, you can see huge piles of tailings and yep. This is so before fairly recently, people were allowed to mine and just leave the stuff as it was. There was not a concern about the environment. And this is something that we also need to recognize. We do have these rules now. What that's doing is for a lot of our mining is making it cheaper for us to mine in other countries that don't have, though either don't have the regulations and the rules or don't have the enforcement of them. And so a lot of times now, instead of taking, for instance, coal from around here, we might ship it in from some other country or other things where they don't have to pay for restoration and that sort of thing, and they just leave it. So there is a real nasty history at times. I hope we're getting better. There's a lot of places that have been really left in really poor shape. So I guess what I want to leave you with here as we finish up, mining is, yeah, it's good. It's good for us. It's good for the things we need. It's bad. It's extractive. It causes a lot of pollution, can be damaging, can be ugly. It's also needed. I mean, all of our lives are dependent on things that come out of the ground, and it's also important. So something that a lot of people don't think about. And with that, I will stop my share screen and then take any questions. So Janet asked, do we get much from China? And the answer is we do get a bunch of things from China. We get, and there's various things that we do get from China, including a lot of metals that are fairly rare. They're called rare earth minerals or rare earth elements. And they are important a lot of times in like power systems, like rechargeable batteries and things like that, but also super strong magnets. And so there's a lot of that. Yes, we do get a lot from China, as it turns out. And some of those things are what we call strategic minerals, and it's a big concern because if we didn't have them, there would be a significant economic and other impacts. So we are dependent on other countries for some of our minerals and our mining that we don't have, or that is just so much cheaper. I mean, good example of that is diamonds, right? We do have diamond mines in the United States. It's just not economical to mine them here. It's a lot cheaper to mine them in Africa. And so guess where most of your diamonds come from? Africa. Now we are starting to get more taken from Canada, but frankly, Canada has a lot less stringent mining regulations than we do because they've got a lot more land, a lot fewer people.
Huh.
So,
Well, that kind of makes sense.
on which country are we most dependent? Ooh, that's a really good question, Janet. I would say it would depend on which exact mineral you're looking at and what exact industry you're looking at. I think you could argue a few things. I think you could argue for the Middle East for oil, because we still do get a lot of good bit of oil, but I'm not sure. But I think you could also argue for Western Sahara for phosphorus for fertilizer. That's a really good question. I'm not sure I'm not sure I could pick one out for one, for the worst or the most. There's usually, the problem is that even for some of the harder to get stuff, there are usually at least a few different sources, a couple. So if we lost one, we might be able to get another, but the price is going to go up tremendously, right? If you've got, think about it like stores. If you've got two stores selling the same thing and one stops selling to you, the other store can really let you, can really raise the price. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, I do appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And we will have another science seminar next week with fewer technical difficulties. Yeah, and we will be in 29106. So as well as here. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.
The